This is the basic knitted bind off. So when your project is as big as you want it to be and you're ready to bind the stitches off of the needles or take the project off, finish the stitches off, this is one of the most easy ways of doing it. It's basically just using the knit stitch with an extra little step so that your project is all finished off. So the first stitch we're going to do, so I just have just a little, obviously very little sample here. I've just continued knitting back and forth all the way up, and now I'm ready to bind it off. So the first stitch we're just going to do just like a knit stitch. So again, we've got the work in the left hand, empty needle in the right. I'm going to go through the stitch just like I would to knit it, and we're going to just take that stitch right off onto the right needle. So everything's the same so far, just as if we were knitting. Same with the start of the second stitch. So same thing, I'm going to go into it, I'm going to knit into it. There. Once you have 2 stitches on that right needle, that's where things start to change. So instead of transferring all of the stitches over to the right and leaving them on there like we would if we were knitting, we're going to actually do a special step to actually get the stitches off the needle. So all that I'm going to do here with my 2 knitted stitches is I'm going to go into the first stitch on the needle. So just right into there, sometimes easier than others. So I've just picked up that stitch with my left needle, and all I'm going to do is pull it over the second stitch and right off the end, and then I'm just going to drop it. So now I have just that second stitch, which is now my first stitch, on the right needle, so just one left, and then the rest are on the left still. And then I'm just going to continue doing that. So knitting each stitch, every time I have 2 on the right needle, I'm going to do that slip over and drop it off. So we'll try again here. So I'm going to go into that next stitch, same thing, knitting just like usual. Take it off the left. Now because I have 2 on the right, I'm going to go into that first loop, slip it over the second, making sure that you're holding that second stitch onto the needle still. It's a little hard to see. Sometimes it's a little bit tricky to do, but you'll get the hang of it. And again, so we just have 1 stitch left. So we'll try again. Into that next stitch, going into that first loop, and then lifting it over the second, all the way off, leaving just that second on there. So you can start to see that we're getting a little bit of an edge there. It'll start to be more obvious as we get a little bit further, but each of those are the stitches that you've bound off there. And we'll just work our way across. So we'll try again. Knit the next one, slide that first stitch over. And as you go, one of the problems with this type of bind off is that it can be very tight. There's lots of ways of making it much stretchier, but they're a little bit trickier. This is fine for just sort of a flat project that doesn't need to stretch. If you were doing like a sleeve or a sock, anything where you wanted some stretch to it, you would want to do something different, but this is fine for this for now. But what we are going to do is as we pull that stitch through each time, we're just going to make sure that we're not going to pull the working yarn really, really tight each time. We're going to let it be maybe a tiny bit sort of loosey-goosey, but not too much, because otherwise it'll look messy on that finished edge there. So we're about halfway across here on my little sample, and you can see now I've got a nice edge coming along the top. So we'll just keep going, finish it off so we can see the whole thing. So keeping a little bit of extra slack in that working yarn is a good thing. It will make it a little bit easier to actually do this bind off, and again, it'll make the edge not really, really, really tight. Okay, so here we go into the last stitch. So it's just the same. Now I've got both stitches left onto my right needle. I'm gonna pull that first one over, and now I've got nothing left on the left. That one's all done. And I just have this one stitch left on my right needle. And so to finish now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna actually break the yarn. We're gonna cut the yarn, and we're gonna leave a bit of a tail, so probably a good 6 inches, something like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull that yarn. We can get rid of the needle there. So you've got your loop, you can see the end of the tail. I'm just going to keep pulling until that tail comes all the way through. So now there's no way, that stitch is not live anymore. It's been bound off as well, so there's no way that it can come undone. So that's our bind off. We've got a nice bound off edge at the top. Not very stretchy, but again, that's okay for what we're doing here. But nice and neat, not too tight. So that's just the basic knitted bind off.